Hey there! Welcome back to Breaking Limits, the podcast where we dive deep into the real life challenges and victories that come with raising and advocating for parents and kids with special needs. I'm your host, Dr. Vivian Pierre, physical therapist, and here we have Miss Emily Woods, warrior parent. And we are here where we are going to dive into the conversation that's often whispered about behind closed doors, but really said out loud. What does it really take to do an intensive therapy for your child? Emily, we're going to unpack this today. And I want to really dive deep into this. I know you recently did an intensive therapy. We have done intensive therapies together. And we're going to talk about the good, bad, ugly, and all the in-betweens of intensive therapies and some of the questions that parents have had about intensive therapy, and also some of the concerns that they've had or the struggles and challenges that they've had with respect to the intensive therapy program. So, for those listening who might not be familiar, intensive therapy refers to therapeutic models that may include physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapies, mostly in condensed time frames. And we would do 3-week type of intensives, 5 days a week for the kids. Really opens up the neuroplasticity of the brain and allows for great strides to be made within a very short time period. And so a lot of these kids with special needs, we find that in doing these intensive therapy programs and in having all three of these specialties work together, and sometimes we often include, sometimes music therapy will be thrown in there at the same time, what we get is great advances and great jumps within their growth and development within these periods of time. So Emily is going to, from the point of view of the parent, is going to tell us a little bit about her experience with respect to intensive therapies and some of the things that she faced as she tackled this. So let's start with this. What led you initially to think about doing an intensive therapy type program?
We were just, I think she was about 3, and we had kind of come out of that dark year of this isn't making sense and all of that.
And just to get our listeners cued back, this is, so Emily is the mom of 4 kids, and her youngest, Georgia, who is now 7, right? And she was diagnosed with FOXG1.
Yep.
Right. And so she has done a lot of intensive type therapy programs. So she's going to take us through a little bit about that specifically.
So she was about 3 when we just kind of came to that realization that this isn't what the doctor said, but it's not normal. So what are we doing? What can we do? We really started exploring those options. We knew that the weekly visits of therapy really weren't doing anything for her because we'd been doing that since she was 6 months old and she just wasn't seeing progress, really, with anything.
And for her, and a lot of times the progress within these kids, it takes some time, or sometimes these, not saying that as a physical therapist, 2 times a week, 3 times a week, sometimes that's sufficient, but many times with some of these kids, it's not sufficient. So you have to look at something different, something more, right?
Yeah, and as time has gone on and we've realized how the syndrome affects her brain and her development, this type of therapy made more sense. So we decided we would reach out and kind of start learning about other kids with the same syndrome. We got involved with the research group. At one point, we were creating smaller groups in different areas because we were so spread out. Georgie was the 243rd confirmed case. So at the time of diagnosis, there was only 243 kids worldwide that we knew of. And so we found the biggest concentration at that time was in Texas. And so we put a little get-together to have the other, we call them foxes. We gathered the foxes in San Antonio in September, and one of the other moms could do nothing but rave about intensives. And at that point, I had no idea what it was. I left that little get together not even knowing what it was, but I knew what I was looking for. Like, I had an idea, I thought. So I'm, back to the Google. What do I do? Google. And I could not find anything in Utah. And after we got home from that trip, we had a wheelchair pageant that one of the women here in Utah puts together every year. And it's just for girls. She has all these adults dress up like princesses. They escort them through a tea party one day, and the next day they have a little beauty pageant. And it's just a time to celebrate them and show them off, no matter what their ability. And so during the tea party, the princesses take the moms, take the kids, the girls, and the moms go and sit and have lunch together. It's like a babysitter, but we're still there. We're all confident and okay that if something goes wrong, because some of us have a really hard time leaving our kids, period, because so many things can go wrong. So it's a very comfortable space for all of us. And so I'm sitting there talking to those other moms, and I still know this mom. She says, I'm saying, do you know anything about this? Have you heard of this? And she's like, yeah, my daughter does these. And there's a clinic in Mill Creek that does this. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Mill Creek, Utah, like right here? She's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, I wonder if they take our insurance. And she's like, what is it? Oh, Select Health. Oh, yeah, they do. That's my insurance. They take that. So it was just like this, like, whoa moment. And so literally the next day I'm calling the lady that owns that clinic, Muriel, and I'm like on her desk. I'm like, I need to come see you. I need to come meet you. Do you have an opening today? Can you make an opening today? I know that's asking a lot because you're a busy person. I'm sure of it. And I'm just going, she says, we can meet tomorrow. Come down. I'll do an evaluation. Great. So my husband takes off work. We go down because we're going, this is our chance. This is something that could really work. And at 3 years old, that's a miracle, right? Because nothing's working. So we go, and she says we can start on this day, and, it's 3 weeks, 5 days a week. I do 4 hours a day, and we bill your insurance, depending on insurance. Anyway, so we sign up, we go, and after 3 weeks, all of a sudden, she is sitting perfectly by herself, no assistance, for as long as she wants. And this awkward, army crawl makes the way she crawled sound good. It was like this blob of things moving on the floor. It was horrible. All of a sudden, she was up on her hands, on her knees, and while it was still a little funky, it was so much better. She had some mobility. And after 3 weeks of therapy, it was exhausting for us as the parents and, having to try and facilitate care for the boys because we were, for all intents and purposes, an hour away from the clinic, but with traffic, frequently it turns into 2. So it was a lot. But we saw so much progress in just 3 weeks compared to her first 3 years of life that really there was no progress.
Right.
We were sold. And so we finished that one and we're like, when do we come back? And I remember her saying, she's getting organized. Give her a break. You'll know when. And I'm going, well, no, I'm not going to know when. I've never done this before. Please.
But this is the excitement, though.
You tell me when I'm coming back because I'm going to do it. And we did. And up until about a year ago, we were doing them 3 times a year because every time she did it, she'd have a week of rest, and then all of a sudden she had all of these things that she just couldn't do, or they were perfected, or it was just nothing but progress.
Right. So and this is, by the way, where I met Emily, because I worked for the IPTI clinic in Mill Creek for some time. I no longer work there, but it was definitely an experience. And yes, we met a lot of kids who traveled far and wide, Guatemala, Hawaii, Florida, that came from far and wide. And it surprised me that people were coming from so far to come and do the intensive. For me, I had just moved from Atlanta here to Utah, and I couldn't understand why these things weren't more standard and why parents were having such a hard time finding the intensive therapy. So this is something that I feel that maybe some parents aren't aware of, and or you're missing the boat when you guys are not really tapping into this space, the ability for the child to have this constant input, right? The input, whether it's a hand holding, right? Where the individual needs to turn around and get those cues from the therapists to be able to do that. Now, at IPTI, we at the time only had some physical therapy that was going on. There was a missing of the OT and the speech therapy, of which I believe that they are now looking at increasing or adding. But that was another area that needed to also be done, because there are some intensive programs that have all three, some that had two, some that have one. But ultimately, what we're seeing is that within this 3-week time period of multiple hours per day, we're seeing such great changes with the kids that we really help to also facilitate and help the parent feel comfortable with facilitating certain things at home, where they can also help create those environments and feel more confident in their role to be able to help the kids progress.
Absolutely.
Right. So tell me a little bit now about the challenges. You kind of started to talk about this, the challenges with the intensive therapy. So, the management of the other kids, the travel that may be necessary to be able to do that with the other kids, the time commitment that is required to be able to do that, possibly the insurance, whether it's covered or not covered. I do know that you have also done some intensive therapies outside of the state. And so talk a little bit about that for me and some of the challenges that you guys face or parents face, just based on your conversations.
So for us, the clinic here, IPTI, they only offer PT up until recently. It was a stretch for us at first, but it kind of became just part of our life. As you plan your year and as you plan different things, that was just part of the plan. We knew that for Georgia, we would take about 3 months in between each intensive. And that was the time that we took to focus on the other kids. We didn't try and play the role of the therapist. We just let her grow in that time, let her grow into the skills that she had gained. And we focused on what the other kids needed. And as we started to homeschool and whatnot with that time is kind of how we scheduled our learning. It is very unstructured because that's what works for my kids specifically. It's a lot of field trips. It's a lot of going and doing.
But I'm gonna jump in here for a second, because as you say, unstructured, what comes up for me is play.
Yeah.
What comes up for me is play. Children learn by play. And so in this space of what we consider to be unstructured, the ability for them to be exploring the different abilities. So as Georgia, right, learns something different or a new motor pattern to be able to create a new movement pattern by just having you guys do the field trips, by just having you do more things, you were able to see her grow or explore more, which further helped with her development, which further helped with her growth in that space.
Yeah, we really started to apply the outside of the box. Life as we had been told was not working for us. And as we have gone through this journey, the same thing with the boys' school, sitting in that classroom 8 hours a day was not working for them. For some kids it does, and that's fine, but for ours it wasn't. And so with that move out of our house and quitting school and quitting doctors, we had a lot of freedom to move and do what we wanted to or what we knew was best. We started traveling more. So my kids have been to like 7 different countries now. We try and do an out-of-country trip at least once a year, every 18 months, somewhere in there. And we try and structure the learning that we're doing when we're home around those areas and things like that so that they can make those real life connections. But at the same time, these are, Georgia is adapting to this moving around. Georgia started walking without assistance in Germany at a Christmas market on cobblestone. Of all places, like a child who does not work well is walking on cobblestone, and we're all just like,
How excited were you?
Oh my gosh, wait a second, don't fall down, that's cobblestone, it's gonna hurt, But where else was she gonna do it? She is a child, all children need to be challenged in their own way, and for her, the harder that this thing is, that's where she's gonna do it.
Well, the reality is that it's input. Right? We talk about this a lot. The input, the sensory input, the different areas that kids can tune around and do that. Because as young kids, right, whether or not they have some type of special needs or not, how do children learn? They fall, they turn, right? They trip, they get up, they go again. When your child falls as they are young, you don't say, oh, no, we don't want them to fall again. No, we say, oh, try again. Let's do it again.
I think it was you, Vivian, that was like, knock her over.
Oh, yes.
My husband thought I was absolutely crazy when I was come home and I was like pushing her over. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, she's getting used to it. Watch.
I recall we were at a session, and why I love Emily as a parent and working with Emily and Georgia was that Emily was open to anything. Yeah. So we would try different things, and Georgia would be responsive. And as Georgia was responsive, we just opened that box further and further and further. And I remember us talking about just allowing her to explore different things and the idea of your child has to fall. Again, creating a safe environment for that. But at the same time, you have to allow her to. And we're doing this. And as Georgia's falling and she's laughing and enjoying herself and trying to get up, we're teaching her how to get up at that point. Yeah. I remember Emily being like, oh, just push her. Oh, okay, I can do that.
I was a little conscious of where I was pushing her. It was definitely on carpet. And it was when she thought she was, because she does. She gets confident, and then it's like, okay, time to knock that out from under you.
Yeah.
She is one that has to be challenged, right. And by challenged, I mean really challenged.
Well, I feel like
make it easy for her. She's going to take it and she's going to run 1,000,000 miles, but we're not going to.
But I feel like we've created a monster because she climbs on everything. She is fearless to be able to do all these different things, which is awesome. Which in my opinion will help progress her even further moving forward, right? So tell me a little bit about the benefits right now of having, because you've also had all 3 therapies, right? So you've had to travel outside of, Utah to be able to even do some additional type therapies. And the challenges with traveling now outside of the state to do that. What are some of the struggles or some of the challenges that you have in that arena traveling?
I feel like we've kind of set ourselves up for some good success in stopping school and stopping and starting to travel more. Mm-hmm. We've learned a lot in just that little capacity. How can I move 4 kids and myself and whatever we might need anywhere in the world to do whatever it is we want to do? Because really that little piece of itself is kind of daunting for some people.
It's a big deal. I know some parents will not do the intensive because they really don't know how to travel. They don't know how to tune around and be able to separate, how do they get on the plane, right? They can't justify doing that, and then maybe their child has an outburst on the plane and they don't know how to manage that, or, how do we tune around and what happens to the rest of the kids when we do that? I've had parents where the dad or the mom will come, but, the other parent will stay behind. But then you have a single mom, and then, if you don't have the support around you, then that's challenging as well. So what are some tips maybe that you can give parents around the idea of travel or how to tune around and offset some of the challenges that you faced earlier, but you've overcome now, and you're a pro right now at traveling?
But I'm gonna say the biggest learning curve was carry on only. I know it sounds crazy, but it does not matter where you go in this world, somebody's going to wash clothes. And you do not need to carry 3 weeks worth of clean clothes anywhere in this world. It does not matter where we go, for how long, it is always one carry-on. The kids each get their own suitcase. They each get a backpack. The backpack is going to have whatever they want to do on the plane, in the car, on the train, whatever, preferably not subways, and yes, that's a difference. But when we're in transit, these are things that they can get out to entertain themselves. Drawing books, coloring crayons, pencils, maybe some little figures to do whatever. And realize that when you're going somewhere new, there's going to be a world of different entertainment for them to explore. Wash your clothes. I always book a hotel that's got a laundry in it. And I always carry little soap packets. Yes, they sell them on Amazon for an absurd price, but they work. Throw it in there with them and be on your way. Like, plan for a day to go do that. The longer you're gone, the cheaper it gets. It sounds funny, but literally any hotel in America, if you stay for 30 days or more, they can't charge you the taxes because it's a rental contract.
Well, I just learned something.
Just saying. You want to do longer trips. The shorter ones cost more. And
let's put a pin in that one.
The homeschool. So when we have been going to Texas, I've been taking homeschool with us. So we, each kid has an iPad and headphones, and they can access curriculum from that. I don't take scissors and crayons, and I don't take all those extra items that we might have at home. It's really just their iPad and maybe a pad of paper, pencil, and crayons, because they're in their entertainment bag is what we call it. But outside of that, we go on field trips when we're out. So like this last time that we went to Texas in March, we went to the Science Museum, we went to the aquarium, we went to the beach. The beach was free, and it was like the best day ever because they all wanted to play in the sand and the water. And you can book a hotel with a pool too, which I don't know what kids are like, we don't want to swim. Mine always want to swim, so there's that.
What I like about what you're talking about right now is you're living your life. So yes, we have intensive, and this is another area where we talk about the relationships, right? That all the focus is usually on the child with the special needs, and a lot of times, parents find it really hard to sometimes separate themselves. If they could duplicate themselves, that would solve all the problems, right? But that can't happen. So ultimately, what's going on is when we can turn around and do that, and you're spending time with the other kids, they're being involved, right? And everybody as a family is doing something together, then, they feel a part of. And so I really wanted to highlight that because I think that's super important in that space around that. So, Emily, just going back to the intensive specifically, we have some parents who, and I know when I was at PTI, we have some parents who love to be with the child in the session. And then we have some parents who love to stay outside and didn't necessarily want to come in with during the session. Give us a little bit of your take as a parent. Which do you prefer and why?
Depending on the clinic, I would say, because for Georgia, she's got plenty of anxiety. Like, I am the one who communicates with her the most and most effectively. So if she's not confident that she can effectively communicate with the therapist that she's working with, she goes into a panic mode and nobody gets anywhere. But if I can sit there with her, then that confidence is there and she's more willing to work. So it depends on the therapist. It depends on, sometimes it's her mood that day, but as the parent, you read the child the best, right? She knows that I'm her biggest advocate. Hands down, mom's the cheerleader, great, whatever role you want to call it. But in some scenarios, she works better when I'm not there. And so for her most favorite speech therapist, I've got to go. She's literally told me, you go out there. And so you have to just read that in the child. I typically use that time for my kids to do their homework that they would do without me. And then we go and do other activities afterwards. But there's not one right answer for that. Just be aware and understand that maybe they need you that day and maybe they don't.
And I would add, from the perspective of a therapist also, I would add, what's the goal? So there are times when there is a goal for some detachment. That is the goal. Mm-hmm. So there's some struggle there, but we've got to work through that. Mm-hmm. There is some times where, yes, the parent, sometimes we're doing some out of the box type of things where the parent's anxiety is taken in and can affect the treatment, right? And we also have where sometimes it's good because we also are trying to help the parent understand how they can facilitate some things at home and even carry that over at home, right? Or when you guys are out and about. So I agree with you that there's no one answer to that. But one of the things that I will say is that a parent shouldn't be outside all the time. No. They have to know what's happening, what's going on, what's the progression, what's the next thing. They have to be involved in that conversation where we are working because it's your goal. It's what do you need? How are we building, the next step in the process that you guys are working towards, right? And so that has to be worked with the therapists in all of those different areas. Yeah,
I think you have a few different types of parents, and some will try and be the therapist, and some are just, I took you to therapy. And I think that as a parent who is looking for progress, you kind of have to be in the middle of those two. Maybe the way that you play with the puzzle is not sitting at the table doing the puzzle. For me and for George, we're on the floor and she's on my lap or, right here. And we have puzzle pieces here and we have the puzzle to put together here so that we're working in that rotation that we're working on right now. But she's still doing the puzzle. She's still getting me as mom. It's just a little bit different on how I would have done it with my other kids.
And the role of the parent, I think, is another big topic that we really need to really get into because, and another session, obviously, but because I had a conversation with a parent once and I said, listen, your role is not therapist. Your role is parent. And sometimes you just have to play. Yep. The pressure, because I know, again, the want to turn around and be there for the kids and be able to do all these different things and make sure that we're not missing a beat. But ultimately, you still want to enjoy your kids. Yep. Let the therapist be the therapist. The role for us as therapists is to help facilitate and really help you progress and to be able to live that extraordinary life for you guys, right? Make those things and those progressions easier and also to chart a course and help you so that you're not alone, that you're not figuring it out by yourself, right? You have that other brain with you, right? And so that's a very really, really good point that you just raised there about that. So thank you for being with us today, Emily, and thank you for sharing your thoughts about the intensive. I know it's a very, very big space. We might even go deeper into that later on about what we do in intensives and why that's important in the sensory world and all those different things. But I really appreciate the conversation and the perspective that you brought to the table here. So if this conversation hit home, guys, I want to personally invite you guys to check out Neuropedia Connect. We're having a lot of conversations about these different areas that are affecting you, affecting your child, affecting your families, right? It's more than just us coming together here and creating some type of membership. It's a movement. It's a movement of, creating a tribe of individuals that are finding solutions for each of us and the families. So if you're still in the middle of the decision, I see you. Take a breath. Your best is enough, right? You are here and we're here to help you. You are not alone. I do want to take a moment to thank one of our sponsors, Utah Academy of Emergency Medicine, Austin Broker. He has been phenomenal, and without him, this would not be possible. So we want to really give him a shout out for what he is doing for us and how he will continue to support us bringing this information to you guys. So with that, Please like, comment, subscribe. And until next time, stay brave, stay kind, and keep breaking limits.